name is Klaus Langhoff-Roos. I'm the Corporate Vice President for Ozempic and responsible for the global commercialization of Ozempic, which means marketing, market access, and the colleagues from medical affairs, the close collaboration in getting the drug on the market. Ozempic, which is the brand name of the molecule semaglutide when we use it for the treatment of type 2 diabetes. And it's my privilege today to talk a little bit about how we get a drug to market. And I'd like to start by telling you how we'd like it to end up being if you're a patient in the United States of America, where we have just launched. Imagine that you're sitting in your couch, you're watching TV, and on TV an advertisement pops up, talks about diabetes, and it could also talk about Ozempic and the benefits Ozempic can give you. You get intrigued, you go down to your physician, and your physician is knowledgeable about Ozempic. Why? Well, because he has been visited by some of our 2,000 sales representatives in the US, having talked about Ozempic as the new drug for type 2 diabetes treatment. He'll also know about it because it'll be in the treatment guidelines, because the drug has benefits above and beyond other drugs and is recommended in the treatment guidelines. So when the patient gets down there and talks about a new diabetes treatment, if we've done our job well in communicating the benefits, he'll say, look, why don't you try Ozempic? And he puts pen to paper, or she, and writes Ozempic. You go down then with your script to the pharmacy. And at the pharmacy, you are going to pick up your script. But actually, you don't do that until 1 month after your visit to the doctor. Because in the US, you will, to start with, get a sample pack. So you get a 1 pack with 1 example of Ozempic in 1 box, which holds all information that you could ever imagine around what the drug does and how you can get help with the treatment. And it will also hold what you will see in here, a copay card, so-called. Because one thing is to get the drug prescribed. The next thing is to be able to get it out of the pharmacy. And if you live in the US, you oftentimes have a good commercial coverage on your insurance plan, which means you can go down to the pharmacy and you can get the drug, but there will be a co-payment. And our job then is to make sure that we have negotiated good contracts such that the co-payment is as low as possible. And if it is not, that we find ways of making sure that you get hold of the drug. So in the US, for example, a patient will not have to pay more than $25 for a script of Ozempic, given that they're covered on a commercial plan. Now, this all sounds complicated, but at the end of the day, our job is there to make it easy, such that the only thing you have to remember is $25 is all I have to pay when I get a script of Ozempic. Now, imagine then you take home the drug and you want to start using the drug. And as you're using the drug, you forgot what the doctor told you, how to use it and what to do. This is a weekly injection. You take it, for example, on a Sunday, but you forgot. What can you do then? Well, you are automatically enrolled in a so-called patient support program where you get access to a nurse who can help you with your injection, but also with general advice on your diabetes treatment. So that is what, at the end of the day, from a patient perspective, the commercialization of a drug looks like. From the time you see about it in the TV until you get it and you get help in taking it. Doing that really well is what creates success in terms of outcomes for patients, but also, of course, revenues for Novo Nordisk. How do we get there? Well, it doesn't start that late in the process to start thinking about how we do drug development. It starts really, really early. So what we have in a highly regulated industry like Novo Nordisk in the pharma industry is a manual for how we develop drugs. This is the project manual. There will be 3 key areas of developing a drug in a 10-15 year period. From research, when you first have the idea of the molecule semaglutide and you put it in a human for the first human dose, and then you go on to development in a so-called phase 2 study where you start using the drug at different doses to figure out which one would be the right dose to use for this particular treatment of diabetes. You take that onwards to phase 3, which is a bigger scale program with more people to get more evidence and also be able to get a label for it. And you get to marketing authorization, which means you basically have approval from the European authorities, the American authorities, or other national authorities that approve drugs. This is where the commercialization actually starts, according to our project manual. However, it starts much earlier than that. This is the way it looked maybe 20 years ago. Now, with the importance of payers also putting perspectives on how much they want to pay for a drug, the engagement commercially starts already at what we call the M2 and M3 decisions on when you start using the drug in somewhat higher doses to figure out which is the right dose for the patient. Now, that means we ask ourselves, will a payer, be that a national authority or an American insurance company, be willing to pay for this drug and the benefit it gives? We measure that in different ways. There is a UK agency called NICE, which says you should be showing that it doesn't cost more than £30,000 for what is called a quality life year, which means that 1 extra year of quality life, so without additional complications. In the US, there is an authority called ICER, which does the same. In Sweden, just across the bridge, there's something called TLV, which has another metric or another benchmark, which is around 500,000 Swedish kroners. The WHO has tried to standardize this as a recommendation, saying that how much you should pay for a drug should be 1 to 3 times the per capita GDP of the individuals in the country. So that will give you a range of what you should be really willing to pay for the drug. And obviously we have to take that seriously, because developing drugs that are not payable is neither sustainable for us nor for the reimbursement authorities. So that's where the early engagement starts. Next, after that, the whole development process comes along with up to 10,000 patients in clinical trials. And at the end of that, we decide to submit and in order to get a so-called label. And the label is that you have 2 parts. One is an indication for what the drug can be used for example, diabetes or obesity. The second part is really what are the claims you have, which means what are the benefits of the drug that you can actually go out and talk about. And there's a third element which is critical, which is what are the side effects of the drug that you are obliged to also communicate when you talk about the drug. And this is what, in essence, we get the next engagement from the commercial side, because some claims are important from a regulatory point of view, other claims are important from an insurance or payer point of view, other claims are important from a physician point of view. So an example is that a payer will want to see how many patients achieved their goal. A physician will often want to see how much did it lower a certain biomarker, or how were the outcomes of the drug for an individual patient. So one looks at overall treatment population, other one looks at individual patient. That leads to different claims. This is where you have to be really, succinct with having both people with market access background, commercial background, regulatory background, to go through and prioritize what are the critical parts of the label that we really need to win in order to get the label that we think is competitive out there for different stakeholders. For Ozempic, we have the privilege of all the so-called head-to-head trials we have made, which is where you compare a drug to all the other existing alternatives in the market. We have shown superiority, both on what is called the primary endpoint, which would be how well it controls the blood sugar, and the secondary endpoint, which is how much weight it lowers. And these two, since it has shown superiority in these two, this is a very easy way, so to say, to generate what is called a superior label, because you simply have superiority claims based on the statistical analysis. So those are some of the sort of key elements of getting the label. And once you have the label, it's all about going off with the label and then having your next round of figuring out how to negotiate to get the communication done. This right here is our first communication piece for Ozempic in the US. And as you can see, it's, even though it might look a little bit glossy, it's not very glossy, and it's not very marketing-like, and it's not like a big commercial, which is because at the very beginning of the phase when you get a drug approved, first of all, you have to stick to very scientific communication until you get an approval of how you can, with more general statements and more I guess, emotional messages can reach people. So this is the way we start. And then onwards, after 2 months or so, you get approval from what is called the OPDP, which is an authority that approves not the drug, but the materials that you use for talking about the drug. And once you have that, you can go on to having a more emotional explanation of what the drug can do to you, not just in how much it lowers blood sugar, but how it makes you feel and can let you live your life without the complications or the burdens that you've typically had with having your diabetes, for example. It will also allow you to go into TV commercials in the countries where this is allowed, which is, for example, the US. So these are sort of the elements of where we would like to end, but also the story of where we start, which is really early in the drug development process on what is a drug worth. And then throughout until we launch, how do you communicate about the drug to make it attractive? What we haven't talked about would be the last thing is, upon patent expiry, which is around 15 years later, then the drug value goes from, let's say, an index 100 to an index 20. And when you have patent expiry, again, this means that all the value that you created, you basically get 4/5 of it gets cut overnight. And there's only two ways that you can manage that, obviously. One is to communicate to investors that you're going to have a huge cut in your revenue. The other way, and this is, I guess, the way we always keep on pushing ourselves to pursue, is to have invented even more efficacious or more patient-friendly treatment, which makes the 15-year patent expiry less important because there's better medicine that is available that people are willing to go out and invest in. So that's, I guess, is where it concludes, where Ozempic in some, I guess it is 15 years from now, will lose its patent, and ideally before then we would have a much better treatment available for the treatment of type 2 diabetes.